Hello, this is Erin. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to talk about starforts in Australia. Now, it's been said that there aren't any starforts in Australia, but there are forts and they could be starforts. Now, you may not know what a starfort is. This picture here is just an outline of what a starfort could look like. It has the particular areas and what they're called. So starforts can also be called bastions. They could be called forts or other. Anyway, we'll have a look at one if I can work this out. There. Okay, yes, there is an example of one in Portugal. As you can see, the walls, the star shape, and the landform structure. Now, it's been said that these were made for defense force and artillery war purposes to protect and defend the land and its people, but they may have had other uses. So let's look at that. Okay, here we go. It's been said that there are no starforts in Australia, and this person, particularly known by jacobbogle.com, says, sadly, there are no starforts in Australia, but there are a few lovely coastal fortifications, such as, and he uses the example of Fort Glanville in Adelaide. He says, there are few land masses on Earth that don't have at least a couple of starforts built thereupon, and Australia is one of them. Antarctica and Greenland have a murderously inhospitable climate as an excuse, and while much of Australia is indeed murderously inhospitable, why would a colony of one of the world's leading starfort exporters not have starforts? 2 reasons: distance and time. Australia is far away from everything. Really? Well, I live in Australia and I've got everything here that I need. I don't think we are very far away from everything at all, but okay, this is just a matter of opinion. And so, here is a picture of, or a map of starforts in the world. As you can see, there's lots of them and none are pinpointed in Australia. However, it says there are 1,775 forts from 105 countries. So, as you can see, there's lots of them all over the world. And I believe, my opinion is that there are starforts in Australia. So let's have a look. If I research fort in Australia, we get a list, and there's more than just these in alphabetical order. So I looked up each one, and we'll go through. And there's Breakwater Battery, Coastal Defence Battery, so it's also called a battery for some reason. Drummond Battery, also known as Fort Drummond. So the labels are used interchangeably with fort, starfort, battery. I guess it depends on the structure and what it was used for, but do we know what they were really used for? Were they already there? Were they constructed for defense in particular, or were they used for other reasons? Now, so another one, Illawarra Battery, a former Australian Army coastal artillery at Port Kembla. Port Kembla Harbour, a major export for coal mined in the southern and western regions of New South Wales. As part of the state government's plan to divert ships containing automobiles, the port has received significant upgrades and infrastructure, including a new maritime office, and many jobs have been created as the need for port logistics grows. So yeah, it's interesting that it says down the bottom here, Port Kembla was identified by the Australian Defence Department in 2023, last year, as the most likely location to home port the future Australian nuclear-powered submarines. So in Newcastle, Australia, it's a big coal exporting region, and there is actually a fort at Newcastle called Fort Scratchley. Now, it could have been a star fort in the past, but we will see. This list also includes the coastal defences of Australia during World War II. The main threat came early in the war from German raiders and the threat of Japanese raids or invasion. Therefore, these forts were used to defend the country and attack the enemy. So here we have a Newcastle Park Battery, the Hill, Scratchley Battery, Newcastle, otherwise known as Fort Scratchley, Wallace Battery, then there's more at Port Kembla, Port Stephens, Sydney, all in perhaps all the states of Australia. There's forts all over this country, and a lot of them do look the same. Like this one at Townsville looks very similar to the one that is at Tomaree, which I actually visited a number of years ago now with my family. And at the time I didn't know much about them, just other than what I was told, what I read on the board. And I'll show you some pictures I took. As you can see, they're all over Australia as forts, not particularly star forts, but let's see. I'll show you when I visited one. Here. This is Tomaree at Port Stephens. It's my youngest son in the picture. As you can see, it's rounded like that other one. Door chained up. Not allowed in there, but I think we could go in there because, as you can see, these forts are not being used for the purpose they were used for. We don't know if there were even other purposes before that, perhaps. Reasons why they were built. And this was all I knew about Fort Tomaree. Why a fort on Tomaree Headland? As you can see here. 1940, Australia was at war. So anyway, that's just an information board picture I took of the place. Now this probably wasn't a star fort, but it's a fort in general. Where the gunners would have been. So yeah, these were used for defense in the Defence Force This is Port Stephens, where I went, on the hill where the fort was positioned, in an ideal place for intruders, invaders. However, in places all over the world, you'll see that forts, star forts, bastions are located in places that you wouldn't think would be ideal for defense. But anyway, we're just looking at the ones in Australia. This overlooks Tomaree Lighthouse, which, of course, we know what lighthouses are used for. However, they may also have been used for something else also. They were there to guide the ships by light at night, but they may also have been used as defense by reflecting light towards ships. But yeah, anyway, that's another story. And that is the Port Stephens Lighthouse of today. A bit different to the ones that were built in the past. It's just my pictures of Port Stephens. So anyway, now we'll get out of that. And let's see, back to research on the list. False Cape Battery, a heritage listed fortification in Cairns, Queensland. That looks very much like the one I just showed you at Tomaree, which is at Port Stephens in New South Wales. Fort Cowan, again, the same shape, but look at all that underneath. Yeah, it looks like it's in ruins. Fort Glanville, as I mentioned earlier, which was the example used on that web page, saying there's no star forts in Australia. Let's see, we'll keep looking. Construction of the fort began in 1878. It was officially opened in 1880 and completed by 1882. Let's see, by the close of the 19th century, the fort was largely unused and had no defense significance. It was briefly used for military purposes during World War I, World War II, though not for its original defense role. For much of the 20th century, the area was put to a variety of uses, including accommodation, a caravan park, and a Boy Scout campsite. Interesting. Okay, let's see. Fort Lytton, heritage listed. Fort Piers, a former defence facility occupying part of Point Nepean, Victoria. Green Street Bunker, Queensland. Hobart Coastal Defences, a network of now defunct coastal batteries, some of which are interlinked with tunnels that are designed and built by British colonial authorities. Yeah, how interesting, because a lot of these constructions, not only forts, they say built by these British people. A lot of them have connections to Freemasonry, which that's what I find interesting about it, but I'll talk about that later. Let's see. During the 19th century, the port of Hobart Town was a vital resupply stop for international shipping and trade, and therefore a major freight hub. Okay, here we go. Kissing Point Fortification, heritage listed, Queensland. It was designed by Peter Scratchley. Now, that must be who Fort Scratchley at Newcastle here in New South Wales is named after a Major Edward Druitt. We also have a Mount Druitt in New South Wales. These people, yeah, they all seem to be linked somehow. Anyway, we'll keep going. Fort Largs, South Australia. Magnetic Battery, Fort War, or the Forts, as it is commonly referred, is a former Royal Australian Navy artillery battery in Magnetic Island. The remains of the facility are now maintained by Queensland Parks and Wildlife Service. Okay. Fort Nepean, former defensive facility occupying part of Victoria, part of a network of fortifications. Okay, protecting the narrow end. The art of setting out a military camp or constructing a fortification traditionally has been called castramentation since the time of the Roman legions. Fortification is usually divided into two branches: permanent fortification and field fortification. So castles are fortifications which are regarded as being distinct from the generic fort or fortress in that they are residence of a monarch or noble. Roman forts and hill forts were the main antecedents of castles in Europe, which emerged in the 9th century. Medieval-style fortifications were largely made obsolete by the arrival of cannons in the 14th century. The arrival of explosive shells in the 19th century led to another stage in the evolution of fortification. Okay, yeah. Tells you a bit about them. And yeah, Amnia Fort in western Siberia has been described by archaeologists as one of the oldest known fortified settlements, as well as the northernmost Stone Age fort. Interesting. Forts in India. The existence of the earliest forts in India have been substantiated by documentation and excavation. In medieval times, the architecture of the forts had both Hindu and Muslim influence. The forts constructed by the British initially opted for simple designs. The existing castles are continually modified, and many of them are privately owned. Now, this tells us that there are 6 types of forts differentiated by their modes of defense. So the Jala Durga is a water fort. I won't try and pronounce their names, but there is a desert fort, hill fort, forest fort, earthen fort, and human fort. And each type's had its own advantages and disadvantages. Okay, so fortified definition is of a place provided with defensive works as protection against attack, and denoting wine of a type to which spirits have been added so as to produce port, sherry, or a similar drink. So interesting that, yeah, fortified is a place, also refers to wine. Now, star forts usually had water around them as what you would call a moat. And yeah, perhaps the water, well, had several uses for, like, well, protection, also boats, maybe submarines. So my local power station was, turned into a battery recently. It had been a power station for a long time with the use of coal and however they make energy, and they demolished it, and it has now become a battery, which is, it's so funny how it's like it's gone complete circle, like from battery to battery. But anyway, this is the news article about our local Lake Munmorah super battery being announced, and wait there. It says the old Lake Munmorah Power Station site has been officially named as the location for the new Waratah super battery, which is set to help secure the state's clean energy future and be operational by next year, 2025. Treasurer and Minister for Energy Matt Keane said the battery will act as a shock absorber for the electricity grid. Okay, it will be the biggest network battery anywhere in the southern hemisphere, providing at least 700 megawatt of standby, I think that's a megawatt, of standby network capacity to the grid. Yeah, so that's news. And I do have a video. It's like a documentary video on that. Okay, not only will this project deliver up to 150 construction jobs during its development and 10 to 15 ongoing jobs, it will also open up an opportunity to turn the old power station into a renewable energy manufacturing hub on the Central Coast. So yeah, this is all new, but it's probably old new, if you know what I mean. So I'll show you the documentary that, where is it? Yeah, okay. That's just a bit about the power station itself from when it opened okay, that's a picture of the old power station with the big cement columns that used to be on the landscape horizon. Especially when I looked across the lake, we would always see those columns, and yeah, we'd drive past the power station occasionally, but now they no longer stand there. They were demolished altogether. I'll show you. This is the link to the documentary.
Just 100 kilometres north of Sydney in the Central Coast region of New South Wales, the impressive 1,400 megawatt Munmorah power station stood for over 45 years. After its closure, Liberty Industrial was engaged to undertake its removal, the largest power station to be demolished in Australia to date. This daunting task involved the removal of the 4 steam-driven turbo alternators, weighing a combined 4,800 tonnes, 2 155-metre-high chimney stacks, 2 boiler houses, coal handling plant and conveyors, and 2.3 kilometres of ash lines. Liberty Industrial carried out the removal of 890 tonnes of bonded and friable asbestos from throughout the site. A crew of 20 specialist asbestos removal workers were mobilised to the project to complete this challenging task. A range of negative air encapsulations were constructed throughout the 60-metre height of the boiler structures, including a highly engineered and detailed access scaffolding and enclosure to access the penthouse at the top of the boiler houses, which included the use of a 300-tonne crane to lift up the required plant and equipment. A full-time hygienist with an on-site lab was deployed to look after the extensive air monitoring and inspection regime required. In 2016, the arduous process of removing the 4 turbine generators began. A combination of hand-cutting techniques using standard oxy-torches, high-flow oxy-torches and thermal lancers were used to downsize the massive machines. Weighing 1,200 tonnes each, Liberty was able to remove the generators efficiently by repurposing two existing 90-tonne gantry cranes located within the 270-metre long turbine hall. The generators were then moved to the scrap area for further downsizing. The two iconic stacks were the twin centrepieces of the Munmorah coal-fired power plant. During the project pre-planning phase, the project team discovered the presence of asbestos vent conduits at the very top of the stacks. And in accordance with strict Australian regulations, these had to be removed prior to receiving approval for the explosive demolition permit. Liberty Industrial deployed its specialist rope access team to climb the stacks and safely core drill and remove the conduits. Liberty Industrial's project team spent many months of careful planning and consultation with a number of government regulatory authorities in the lead-up to Demolition Day. Finally, in March 2017, Liberty's meticulously organised and executed controlled explosive techniques toppled the twin stacks exactly as planned.
Copy site, 10 seconds to blow down from now. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Firing out.
So there you go. You can watch the rest of that if you like. There's the link. Okay, and so yeah, I just thought, what is the difference between a fort and a battery? On this site it says a fort is a military structure or stronghold often occupied by troops, and a battery is a fortification typically with 6 or more cannon. So yeah, it's it kind of ties in with itself in a way. This is the site where I got that definition, which is wait there. I'll put the link in the description. But yeah, following from that description, I thought this was kind of a little added interest, saying the fort lot in 1805, the Orphans Court List property of the late Jasper Yates, says including the fort lot, and that was in connection to what was it, Newcastle, and again that's another connection to our Newcastle. Why is our Newcastle called Newcastle? That's another thing I need to research. But anyway, I just thought there's a few things of interest there that you could probably think about or research yourself. And yeah, until next time, yeah, hopefully we can learn a bit more from each other. Okay, see you then. So Pope's Eye is the uncompleted foundation for an island fort intended to defend the entrance to Port Phillip in Victoria. Okay. Fort Queenscliff dates from 1860, when an open battery was constructed on Shortlands Bluff to defend the entrance of Port Phillip. Okay. Now, let's see, South Channel Fort Tomaree, which is the one I showed you when I visited. Weeby High Stone Fort. The oldest surviving European building in Australia was built in 1629 by survivors of the Batavia shipwreck and massacre. Okay, so the barracks, batteries, bunkers, and forts in Sydney. So yeah, they get lots of different names. Now, a fort is a fortified building or strategic position. The city was guarded by a ring of forts. So yeah, that's the definition of a fort. Historically, it's a trading station. Now, yeah, that's interesting. When I think about like the Great Wall of China, was it to keep the Chinese out? Was it to keep the Tartarians out? Or was it a trade route? Yeah, we just don't know, but all of these things are interesting. Now, Peter Scratchley, I thought I'd look him up. Major General Sir Peter Henry Scratchley, KCMG. Now we know when there's initials, they're linked to Freemasonry. Yeah, which I find interesting also. If you look at that picture, Peter Scratchley's camp. So pretty good setup. He was born in Paris, 13th child to Dr. James Scratchley, Royal Artillery, and his wife Maria Nee Roberts. He was educated in Paris and at the Woolwich Academy, and then began a career as an officer of engineers in the British Army. Scratchley served in the Crimea and Indian Mutiny, and in October 1859 he was made a captain. He then had several tours of duty in the Australian colonies advising on defence. In 1860 he was sent to Victoria to plan a system of defence for that colony. But after working on this for over 3 years, his plan was not adopted as a whole. Scratchley had, however, conducted batteries around the coast of Port Phillip by expending a comparatively small sum. So his achievements here in Australia: founding the Corps of Engineers in Victoria, 1860, the fort on Bear Island, Fort Scratchley, Fort Lytton, Fort Glanville, and Fort Queenscliff. He retired with the honorary rank of Major General in 1882, but was still employed as Defence Advisor for Australia by the Colonial Office. He was appointed Special Commissioner for Great Britain in New Guinea and arrived in Port Moresby, was made the seat of government. Okay, anyway. Bear Island, Fort Scratchley. History of Fort Scratchley. Flagstaff Hill is where coal was discovered in late 18th century. Lieutenant John Shortland had come upon the land while looking for rogue criminals, but his pursuits were unsuccessful, and instead he found fragments of coal at the base of the hill. So it became the home of coal exploitation throughout early 19th century until the army claimed the land in 1843. Plans for a complete fort were not made until after 1870, when the threat of an attack by Russia began spreading throughout Newcastle, due to the increased hostility between England and Russia. The fort was finally finished in 1882. The Russians were no longer a threat, and the Japanese had become the new enemy. Okay. So Mr. Scratchley became the most distinguished Order of St. Michael and St. George. It is a British honour and a very Freemasonic honour. If you actually see, what is it? Yeah, what's on the medal? Yeah, and those things actually look like almost like Starfort itself. Anyway, Fort Queenscliff, located Victoria, Australia. Yeah, guided tours. The fort is an active defence department site, so access is only by guided tours. Okay, this, yeah, same one. North Head, this is North Fort, another one, was the backdrop for some of the earliest interactions between First Nations people and Europeans. It also occupies notable space in the nation's quarantine and military narratives between 1881 and 1925. The area was used to quarantine people suffering from deadly epidemic diseases, and it also served as their final resting place during the Second World War. Military fortifications at North Head formed part of a defense system that spanned 300 kilometers of coastline. And so that's at Manly, New South Wales. Fort Nepean, one of the fortifications that protected Melbourne during World War I and II, located at the tip of the peninsula where the waters of Port Phillip meet the wild waves of the Southern Ocean. Much like Fort Tomaree. Again, during the late 19th century, the government decided that Victoria's rich goldfields needed protection. Now that's questionable too. Let's see. Oh yeah, we looked at what a fort is. Fortification, it's also called fort, fortress, or stronghold. It's saying is a military construction designed for the defense of territories in warfare and used to establish rule in a region during peacetime. Derived from Latin. From the very early history of modern times, defense walls have been necessary for cities to survive in an ever-changing world of invasion and conquest. So you would probably know of Wall Street in New York. That is so called because of a wall that was part of a fort that was built. So that's where it gets its name. And as we know, lots of cities are walled, whether they were forts, starforts, whatever purpose they are. Let's see. Also, the water could be for energy, like creating electricity, perhaps, even back in the 1600s. The water may have had lots of uses, maybe even making wine. Anyway, let's see. Fortification, also, we've already seen this. And there is food fortification, the practice of adding vitamins and minerals to commonly consumed foods during processing to increase their nutritional value. So yeah, fort or fortify is to strengthen. What is the simple meaning of fortified? To make strong. To strengthen and secure, such as a place or a town, by forts or batteries. A city fortified by high walls. Okay. What is fortification in the Bible? A fortified city was considered a blessing, a place of security and strength, and something to be desired. We too should desire the blessing of fortified walls. Okay. Battery. A container consisting of one or more cells in which chemical energy is converted into electricity and used as a source of power. Or a fortified emplacement for heavy guns, anti-aircraft missile batteries, such as, let's see, the archaic definition of battery is an elevated platform on which cannon could be placed. Okay. Batteries? batteries, and yeah, interesting. A device used to power electric devices. The infliction of unlawful physical violence. Yeah, there's kind of two ways to say that. There's battery and battery, maybe, I don't know, but it has several meanings. Maybe they all relate. Okay, a coordinated group of artillery weapons, an elevated platform on which cannon could be placed, an array of similar things. School children take a battery of standard tests to measure their progress. A set of small cages where hens are kept. The catcher and the pitcher together in baseball or in chess, two or more pieces working together on the same rank file or diagonal. The music, a marching percussion ensemble, the section of the drumline. And yeah, translations from Korean: battery, device storing electricity; legal act of unlawful violence; coordinated group of artillery; historical elevated platform for cannon; array of similar things; set of cages for hens. So if I were to map these forts in Australia, you can see they're all down the east coast, South Australia, Western Australia, and there are the Defence Force forts in Tasmania. Hard to locate exactly, but yeah, they were. Can't zoom in on that, but yeah, there are a lot in Sydney, and as we go around the country, from the north, just above the tip of Queensland is Thursday Island, Green Hill Fort. Magnetic Island actually has Old Forts Road, and yeah, the Kissing Point Fort with the lookout, that's a very interesting place to look at. There's monoliths on that lookout hill, and yeah, I don't know much about them actually, but anyway, Fort Lytton near Brisbane, Fort Scratchley near Newcastle, Sydney's North Fort, Outer Middle Head Forts, Bear Island Fort. As you can see, there's lots and lots. And what I would like to see is the aerial view of these forts, looking down to see if there are any star-shaped formations. It's a bit hard to see exactly, but yeah, starting with Green Hill Fort up north again, we can see what they call the batteries, where the guns were emplaced. Yeah, this Magnetic Island looks rather interesting too, with the Forts Road, the Forts and Sphinx Lookout, and what else? Kissing Point. As we get a bit closer, zooming in, can't really make out too much, and some of these areas can't zoom in too close because Google doesn't allow it. Yeah, so Fort Scratchley aerial view. You can see a bit of formation there. You can see the gun emplacements. But yeah, what was there before that? And as they say, these forts are interlinked and have a lot of underground tunnels, which, yeah, we can't really just go and explore. A lot of these places are closed to the public and have guided tours and make money out of tourists. Anyway, it would be interesting to be able to go and just have a look around. Yeah, so do your own search and see what you find. Yeah. So, well, we know there's lots of forts in Australia, lots of batteries, and old war gun emplacements. There are, that's an example of where Google won't show South Channel Fort. I couldn't get any closer than that, which is why it's so blurred. Yeah, so it's always interesting just looking around Google, but even better to go visit boots on the ground explorations, which I love to do. I'd love to get out more and be able to do that. But at the moment, it's just Google search on Google Earth. Yeah, so yeah, let me know your thoughts. They're just ley lines. Yeah, I'm interested in them too. So yeah, that's it for now, and I'll see you in the next video.